Yes, the Jordan. I am gosh, what am I? A construct of the digital era, dating back to building enterprise systems using Microsoft Dynamics. A lot of my work when I first got into the enterprise space was on premise. This would mean we would go into businesses, some of which you probably know. I worked with Argos out of Dallas, Raising Cane's out of Dallas. Worked with the Tampa Bay Rays. Worked for pretty large companies, and as an IT enthusiast, we would go into businesses and we would help their C-suite. Everybody would get in a room. There would be like 8 of us, right, at a conference table, and we would all share ideas about how the system should be implemented. Boy, the days of that has definitely changed. A lot of what I see today is outsourcing to overseas countries. I'm not against it. Certainly, I've worked with people in my industry that are across different countries' borders and nations, and have had very successful projects to that extent. I do think that the demand has certainly changed in the enterprise space, and one of the things I'm finding is that just probably 8 years ago, we would have statement of work contracts signed for hundreds of thousands of dollars in investments. Now, I'm not saying that those days are long gone. I certainly think that publicly traded companies and larger companies are investing that kind of dollars into new technology. What I would say, though, is that what I'm seeing is we're living in a world where you need to create the platform first and then sell it as a subscription model. I started working with Business Central in 2016 when it first came out. Worked with a company called TriBridge, and we implemented Business Central sparingly. My main focus was Dynamics GP, but I knew that Business Central was going to be a platform of the future. Really, 8 years later, I'm not so sure. I think that starting to work with artificial intelligence, I'm quickly learning that we can build platforms similar to these platforms like NetSuite and Business Central. I think using database schemas that are much more advantageous for the company and still providing audit controls. For example, starting to use a platform called Plaid, and with Plaid, we can pull the transactions directly from the bank. So whatever you're doing accounting-wise, if you can have access to the bank and then provide it through a graphic user interface, I built some intellectual property centered around swiping. So think about like swiping cards. Most of you know that through Tinder or Bumble. So using swiping technology is something that I think is going to be in the future of business, because entrepreneurs that are small business owners are going to demand it. So imagine waking up in the morning knowing that you had 10 transactions the day before, and instead of logging onto your laptop, you're swiping transactions. I think that building out these platforms for artificial intelligence around the enterprise space, in order to attract the customers, I don't think that it's going to be around the general ledger. I don't think it's going to be around collections. I actually think that building front-end applications is going to be centered around billing. So rather than take the approach of accounts payable or owing people money, I think what I'm going to do here is create some short videos, and I bought a domain called Boox.Expert. What I want to do with that is I want to create a billing solution. So imagine you walk up to maybe you're an interior designer and you get done with a job with one of your clients, and you need to bill that client. Well, rather than opening up QuickBooks or opening up Business Central or even opening up Stripe, you can simply just text it through a chatbot. And that chatbot really is OpenAI on the back end. And that chatbot will then build it into an invoice. That day is a timestamp. The itemized lines is simply through voice, and all of that can be done through a JSON packet that then gets uploaded into the Stripe ecosystem. Now, what I'm thinking is it's going to be a hybrid of, well, it's your platform that you own, and we're facilitating the communication lines between platforms like Stripe, platforms like Business Central, or whatever the backend might be, and then we can integrate from there. But I really do think that providing a billing mechanism is going to attract customers, because the billing is all over the place right now. Some people are accepting Zelle payments. Some people are using Venmo. There's so much shortcomings around the digital space on the billing side. And, QuickBooks certainly does have that billing concept built in, where you can click to pay and such. But I do think that Stripe should be used long term, because of its customization capabilities across businesses. So what I'm going to do in this first video is we are going to, using just OpenAI, not Cursor, not Claude, none of these fancy project management tools. We're just going to use straight up OpenAI. We're going to use DigitalOcean, and we're going to use Microsoft Azure, those three platforms. And we're going to build a cool front end, and we're going to have OpenAI as our chat. We're going to build out a user profile login capability, and we're going to build it and connect it somehow to Stripe. Now, I've certainly figured out Stripe on my end and how to do that. What I haven't figured out yet is, well, how are we going to connect other Stripe accounts to it? So that's going to be the interesting challenge here, is connecting. And I know that we can use Stripe Connect, but I want to be able to make sure that the customer is stored on the platform that's integrated for that company. I don't want to store customer information. See, that's what I want to try to do, is I want to facilitate the CRM capabilities. I want to make sure that the customers that use our platform own their data. Certainly want to take a cut off of the billing. Certainly want to take some other type of consulting fees. In the past 4 years, I feel like I've been working for people for free. The cost of IT, and that's another argument or debate that should be had in the future. But I want to walk through this video, and I want to show you exactly how to build your own apps using AI, using DigitalOcean, using Azure. I don't think that these low-code tools are necessary anymore. I've been building on Bubble for about 3 years. My background's in accounting and finance. I went to school at University of Tampa for accounting and finance, graduated, was so interested in auditing, and all of the CPA firms really turned me off, because in the state of Florida, you have to have a fifth year to become a CPA, and my financial situation just didn't make sense for that. So TriBridge luckily gave me an opportunity, took it. It was great. But my background wasn't software development, and your background probably isn't either. So I want to explain how to do this app building with you. And sure, you may not build like a Stripe platform like what I'm building, but what you might build is maybe some sort of I call it hyperlocal tech tools that can be used in your community, in your cities, across the country. And you don't need a venture capitalist, because venture capitalists is not where it's at. We're living in a world that you can do everything yourself. You're going to need a marketing plan. I only have 47 followers on Instagram, and I think 20 subscribers on YouTube. But maybe you have more social capital than I do, and I hope you do, because I never really got into social networking. Not sure why. I'm about to cry right now. I think that even if you don't have the social capital, we live in a world where you probably know somebody that does. And if you can get them to put their phone down, you can get them to sit with you, because everybody's addicted to their phone right now. It's absurd. Again, that's another debate that I'm going to have later on. But if you can sit down with a friend of yours that does have the social capital, and you put your head together around the technology side with their social media capability, this is very powerful. I think that companies like X, that Elon Musk owns for some odd $50 billion, I think that they've got their backs against the wall. And as soon as community developers and citizens and government elected officials figure out that they can utilize ChatGPT in a way that is not going to be destructive and not going to be world ending, then I think that we're going to live in a different society. A society that embraces the nerds. A society that embraces change. A society that will certainly provide value across the entire value chain, economically speaking, not just the top tier. I think you have to get the bankers out of here. I think you have to get the shareholders out of here. I think that our communities have so much hyper-local inside of them, so much will, so much drive, so much power behind them, that small business is the backbone of communities. Small business, I'm in Cartagena right now, and this is small business. All of Colombia is small business. I am very positive about where humanity is headed, even though I've seen destructive use of capital across industries during COVID and even after COVID, aka PPP loans, that I do think that small businesses can rear its head and say, you know what? We don't need eBay. We don't need Amazon. We can build these apps of the future together as a community, share our resources, share our goods and services. So that's where I think these videos can go. I invite you to learn and sit with me and learn. And if you have any questions, I'm an email away. I'm very open about sharing my knowledge. I believe in open source. Certainly, if you build a project, would like to be involved in it. I don't like to work for free. But please reach out. I can certainly lead you in the right direction. What you're going to see is a lot of copying and pasting. You're going to see elements like functions. Think of functions as mathematical equations. You're going to see copy and pasting of styling. ChatGPT can write everything for you. You don't need a software developer on your team. You can do this yourself. There's a few concepts that you'll have to learn, but as you can see, we're going to build this from scratch, and we're going to use natural language. I don't believe in the destruction of humanity. I don't believe in the Terminator theory. I actually think that artificial intelligence, where it stands today, is poised to bring hyperlocal into the discussion globally. Hyperlocal is a term that I coined. Maybe I didn't coin it, but I started using it about 2 years ago. And I do think that we're going to see local economies thrive again. It might not be mom and pop restaurants, However, I think that we're going to see a change, and that's what I call hyperlocal. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm eager to show you everything that I know, and I'm hoping that it inspires you, and I'm hoping that you can build with me. So this first video is going to be the foundations of just putting some use cases together around a chat app and building that chat with your AI into a couple of database tables. And think about a database table as an Excel spreadsheet. That's all it is. Rows and columns to store the information that is closest to you in your company. And you don't need to buy a $10,000 server anymore. You just need to subscribe for a Microsoft subscription. The average database that can hold millions of lines of record, where you don't need to have a significant horsepower because it's going to be your database, may only cost you $30 a month or less. So this is how you can begin to build. So let me walk you through this, and feel free, if you have any questions, my email is on my website under the Citizen Developer section. You can just click the email button and it'll email me. Collabra Partners is the company, and my name is Jordan, Jimenez, JIMENEZ, at CollabraPartners.com. Culebra is one of the most beautiful beaches and islands in the world, so that's where my inspiration comes from. That's why I'm in Cartagena right now. Tulum next month. So come with me and we'll start building. All right. So let's go ahead and talk through the three different platforms that we're going to be using to build Boox.Expert. I'm simply going to be using Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Azure is going to provide us the back-end SQL database that we're going to need to provide the user experience on the front end. We'll be using DigitalOcean throughout this course. At the moment, we're going to be using Code Beautify to test out the code. We're not going to have to worry about using DigitalOcean just yet, but that's going to be the hosting platform that's going to host our app. We'll also be using OpenAI, which is going to be the middleware that's going to power our front end to our back end. And this is going to be interesting because if you haven't implemented OpenAI before, you're going to see the realm of possibilities that you have with OpenAI. So these are the three tools that we'll be using. So let me just kind of walk you through the Microsoft Azure platform, and you can see that I am in Microsoft Azure right now. And if we go to the home screen here, you'll see that we have a function app and SQL databases. The SQL databases is where our data is going to live. Now, if you're not familiar with SQL databases, there are certainly other introductory videos, and I will put together a few videos for us to review, but you can see I've got a Byron SQL database, a Collabra, and then this local hyper SQL database here. We're going to use the Byron SQL database just because I have everything already set up for Byron here. If we click on the home screen, I'm going to click on function apps, and the function apps act as our middle point where the front end talks to the back end database where OpenAI is going to live. And by using a function app, you're going to protect a lot of your intellectual property by not having it on the front end code, and you're going to store it within your function app here. So we're going to use Byron Kitchen. It's another platform that I've got for my company. And you'll see that I already have a number of different functions down below that are doing some things with another company. But we're going to use this Byron Kitchen, and then embed our function app here, and we can always switch it over later to a brand new function app. But this is where we'll create our middleware to talk to the back end from the front end. So that's Azure here, and as you can see, we have a ChatGPT chat box open, and on the left-hand side here, you can see that I have my developer side of ChatGPT, and it's very easy to set up. You just go to developers at OpenAI, or just go to the URL platform.openai.com and create an account, and then under dashboard and then API keys on the left-hand navigation pane, you'll see different keys that you can create. So we'll create a new key, and then we'll include that in our fourth step. So up here on the top right, I've put together this slideshow, and if I click on next, the first thing that we want to do is build out the database and the chat system. I envision Boox.Expert to primarily be a chat platform for your accounting system. And with this first video, we're going to create SQL database tables for the chat-based billing assistant and users. We're also going to insert test records so that way we can see it on the front end, and then we'll recap and preview the next steps here. So let's go ahead and jump into our ChatGPT, and I'm just going to prompt ChatGPT and let them know the platforms that I'm using, and that way ChatGPT is going to help me insert these records and create the database tables. You don't have to know T-SQL to be able to do this. You do have to have a way of getting to the back end, and you can do that either through your database. So if we go to Home, click on SQL Databases and Byron, we can access the back end using the database environment here, and there's an area here called Query Editor, and if we go here, you can see that if we continue as my user, we can now go ahead and run scripts directly from the browser. You can also download what's called SQL Server Management Studio, or Microsoft SQL Server, and the acronym for that is SSMS, and it's a freeware, but I like to use this because it gives me much more of a graphic user interface to be able to work with my code that I'm going to do on this Byron database. And you can see that I'm connected here using the connect option, database engine, and I'm connected to my databases, which are Byron, Calibra, and then the local Hyper database here. So right now I'm operating here with a new query on the top within the editor for Byron. And the way I know that is there's a drop down up here on the top left which you can select, and then you can access your different database sets here. And right now I'm in Byron. So let's go ahead back to ChatGPT, and I want to go ahead and let ChatGPT know what we're working on. So I'm going to prompt ChatGPT using 4.0 here, and we'll go ahead and say I am building a platform that is going to be a next level billing platform, and we want to create a user experience on the front end that interacts with Microsoft Azure through a function and talks to the back end to get the data and create the data. All right, so I'll go ahead and enter that in. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm also going to prompt it and say, we want to focus solely on a wireframe and have 1 pixel borders for all the divs. If you don't know what divs are, you could certainly take up a crash course in HTML. Divs really are just containers, so you could say all the containers rather than saying divs, and we'll just go ahead and say all the containers, and we don't need to focus on the front end just yet. We want to create the database tables. The purpose of the app will be to bill clients, and we will be using a chat experience to do so. The table we need to build first is the chat table that will store the chats. the chats will be between the user and OpenAI Chat GPT. The columns that I'm thinking we need will be columns, and these are columns that are going to live in your rows and columns. So think about your database as like an Excel spreadsheet. So your columns might be what, right? We might have a user ID, a text display, a created on, a modified on, a and the user name. All right, so let's just go ahead and create that. I think that that's a good start there. So we'll go ahead and create that, and we also need a chat ID because we might have multiple chats that need to be stored here. So we'll just have that there. We would also, we'll just have that there. The user ID is going to be a unique, or excuse me, the chat ID is going to be the unique identifier, and the user ID will come from a different database table, which whenever I say database table, just think about it like an Excel tab, right, at the very bottom. So different database table, and the created on will be the current date and timestamp, and the modified on we may not need, but it is there if we need it. All right, so we'll also let it know this is going to be created in Microsoft SQL SSMS. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and send that chat, and we'll just go ahead and see what it says here. It's going to go ahead and store that, and it's going to then have me create the chat. And I'm just going to say, let's rename that chat database table to Boox chat. All right. All right, there it goes. So now, like I said in earlier discussion, we're just going to copy and paste this code, and we're going to paste it right there, and then execute it, and you can see that the command was successfully created. Now, if I do a new query at the top, you can see that it cascades different query editors here. So let's go ahead and just do a select star from, and we'll say Boox chat, and let's see what pops up here. So you can see there's our chat ID, our user username, text display, created on, and modified on here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's now create about 10 test records of the chat happening between the OpenAI assistant and the user. We need to insert on the same table, so we'll create some records. And it's going to develop me a script now that has these different IDs here. So you can see that there is some text that's being displayed. There's the get date. So I think that the user ID, that's the chat ID. So the user ID is going to be Jordan OpenAI. So let's go ahead and just copy that code, and we are going to insert that, and let's see what happens here. Oh, 10 rows affected. So now let's go ahead and do a new query, and let's do select star from Boox chat, and let's see if our data is there. There it is. There's our data. We don't have anything on the modified on. We have it created on. There is a text display, has nothing to do with billing. It doesn't look like maybe. There's our user ID and there's our chat ID. Now, I think the user ID needs to be different for OpenAI versus myself, and then I also think that the chat ID needs to be the same because we're going to be working with one chat right now. So those are my two edits here. So I'm going to say, let's delete those records and let's recreate them. But this time we want to use the same chat ID for all the records because we are going to be working on the same chat. And for the user ID, it should be distinct to the username, like Jordan or OpenAI. And you can see right now we're doing all this in natural language, so it's going to provide me the scripts that I need to go ahead and create this here. So one thing that you'll notice is it's actually giving me a variable. You can see this declare with the @chat ID is giving me a unique variable for this chat, and it's identifying the user ID as 22222 for OpenAI and myself as 11111. So we'll copy that and we'll now just press enter here and we'll delete that and we'll add this in here and create those records. Now with these queries, I can run one at a time. So I'm just going to highlight this and click on execute. 10 rows deleted. I'm going to highlight this one. Insert. Okay, it's a violation of a primary key. So I don't need to worry about troubleshooting this. I'm just going to copy this here into, like I said, we're going to do a lot of copying and pasting here. So I received this error message. What should we do? All right. Let's go ahead and modify this table. So what we're going to do is it's requesting here. We're going to modify this table. And we are going to now do this here. Modify. It cannot provide a, I'm receiving this now. Let's see. Receiving this now. And I'm just going to say this. I'm going to say, let's drop the table. Let's drop the table entirely and create a new table so those records can go into the table. I'm not worried about the data that we lose. All right. So let's make the easier route here. So we can just drop the table. I mean, that's the easiest way to do this, and we'll recreate it here. So I'm going to drop the table. And again, I'm using natural language. We don't have to worry about really what the code actually means unless we were in like a production environment. But at that point, you know, it might be best to have somebody that can work on that for you with troubleshooting it within ChatGPT here. So this really kind of helps you get the app off the ground. So let's go ahead now and insert these records. Oh, there we go. So now let's see here what we got. So I'm going to delete this, select star, which is just an asterisk that says give me all records and all rows from Boox chat. And there we go. We've got a chat ID now that is unique, so it's all going to be in the same chat. We have a message ID here, which means that it's a separate message that's being sent. The user ID, the username, and then the text to display, and the created on there. So this is excellent. Now, look, the created on is at the exact same time. So, you know, when we're looking at this in the chat, these chat boxes might be kind of completely just out of order, right? until we have the created on with actual date and timestamps. It created all at the same time. We'll work through that. What I want to do now is, since we have the SQL table created, really the next step is to create the front end user experience. There's a couple of gotchas here, but the first thing that I want to do before we create the front end code is we want to define the function app, because there's going to be something that we have to do on the install that may take just a couple minutes to create that function. So I want to go ahead and create the function, and we will now move on to, I believe, the next process here. So if we click on next, we're going to create the front end chat experience. But I do think that we need to create the function first, so this will come in a few minutes. So let's go back to ChatGPT, and let's say I want to create a function now for Azure that gets all the chat records for that database table and provides it to the front end using a JSON response. All right, so as I mentioned in our earlier introductory clips, JSON is what we're going to use to be talking back and forth. It's going to be the easiest way for the front end to receive the information, and then we can have ChatGPT write us the code for the front end. So we're going to use a JSON response that comes from that middleware, which is the function. So I'm going to just ask it to create a function, and we want to be able to see the user, actually we want all of the columns to be provided in the JSON response, because we'll figure out how to parse that later. All right, and we'll say include all the columns here. So create the Azure function with Microsoft SQL as part of the package. All right, so we're going to say that. And it's going to create me now a function. And it's going to tell me what to do to install the MS SQL package. And there is our index.js file. So there's actually 3 different files that is going to be important here when you're creating these functions. On the top left, there is the index.js, there is the package.json, and there is the function.json. So the index.js is your core code. The package tells your code what to install for that function to work, because there are so many plugins that you can add on to functions. The function.json is directing the index.json on how to behave. So we have those 3 different files. And once you get the hang of it after a couple times, it'll be easy for you here. So let's just review the code real quick. So what is it doing? It's taking the user password server database and options of the MS SQL configuration, and then creating the main Azure function here, which the Azure function is pulling, look at this, the select from our Boox.Chat database table, and it's pulling all the records. And then down here, if it is successful, it's going to return the JSON format here with the record set back to the front end. If it's not successful, it's going to return a 500 error. So that's going to tell us whether or not the function is successful or not. So let's go back here, and we're not going to actually put the environment variables here. As you can see, it's wanting to store these variables. You could hard code this. I wouldn't recommend it. But we actually have a connection string that we're using right now on Byron. So I'm going to say we're using a connection string. For the Azure function, we are actually using a connection string called, let's go grab that connection string. I have it in my environments here, so we'll go down to our functions, and that's fine. We'll go to Byron Kitchen. we will grab our environment variable. And you can see here's all of my environment variables, and I've got one already set up called SQL connection string. So I'm just going to say this and that and put that in there, and it's going to rewrite it for me. Amazing. So it does have the necessary code now. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go back to my overview section of my Byron Kitchen function app. On the very top, I'm going to do create. The first selection is going to be an HTTP trigger. We have other selections here, but let's go ahead and just work with the HTTP trigger, because an HTTP trigger is triggering from the front end. We'll just call this, we'll actually let ChatGPT tell us what to call it. Or I will say I am going to call the function get billing chats, or get billing chat. Get billing chat. We'll create it. And you will see that it is going to create the function on the top right. It successfully created it, and it's going to take us directly to a sample code under code plus test. And now, once it loads the sample code here, I can just go ahead and copy and paste that code directly into the sample code here. So let's go ahead and copy this sample code. Here's my Azure function. All right, it's taking just a slight second here to load. And it might have just paused on me, so let's go to code and test. There it is. It is loading the code now, and you can see there's my index.js. It already created it for me. I'm just going to do Control A to highlight everything, Control V to copy. I do like to kind of remove that semicolon there. Not necessary, but I do like to do that. You can see that it does recognize my SQL connection string here. And most important, I'm going to save this. Now for a little bit slightly more technical part. As I mentioned, we do need these three files, so package.json, function.json, and we need to look at the package.json that it created, which is going to be, it doesn't look like it gave it to me, so let's just say we need a package.json. Remember, these are the plugins that are going to be installed, so we need package.json, and we need it to have MS SQL. We also need the function.json. All right, and we're going to create those files using a backend technical area here. And here's our package.json. We'll do copy, and we'll go back here. We've already saved it, so we don't have to worry about that. And we'll go down. I'm going to scroll down now into the development tools here. So we have a place called Advanced Tools under Development Tools tab within the navigation pane. So we'll click on Advanced Tools. We could do this through the editor if it already has those, but we do have to run a command, which is pretty straightforward, but that's why I like to do everything on this back-end area here. All right, so it's called Kudu Services. We'll go to our command prompt, which is here under Debug Console. And all of our files are going to be stored under site, under www.root. And I'm going to find what we just created, which is the get billing chat here. So I'm going to click on get billing chat. There's our function. We need to add our package, so we'll do plus, new file, package.json. We will edit the package.json, and we are going to then add it in, and notice the dependencies is MS SQL. Save that, and then edit the function. We'll go back to ChatGPT, and we'll find the function here. All right. One thing about the function, just notice it says index.js. Sometimes ChatGPT does put a front bracket or some type of other directory in front of it, just make sure it's just index.js. So we are on the function now. We've just added that. I like to remove any spaces behind it, so save. And this is where we need to run the script. So the script is this simple: npm install, enter, and it's going to sit here. It doesn't look like it's doing anything. It will certainly build this out for us. So just keep that in mind, that it is going to build this out. There's no status bar. It's going to run. And while that runs, you can see, oh, we've got some issues here. Package.json would be actual JSON, not JavaScript. So let's take this and let's go back here and put this in. And I like to just do that. Ooh. I bet it probably has some sort of comment or something. Let's go back here and go back to our package. All right. Oh, maybe it didn't save it. Okay, maybe I didn't save it, so we'll save it. All right, and now let's try it. npm install. And while it's running, I'm going to go back here and say I went ahead and did that process. Now for the encore, let's build the front end. I will supply the function web address later, but for now we want to build a simple wireframe for the front end that mimics a chat with a text input for the chat and a send button. We will program the send button later, but for now we want to get all the chat records and place the chat records with the name of the sender, the text display, and the date and timestamp sent. We would like that properly organized as if it was a chat on a messaging app, right? Messaging app, messaging. Additionally, when the page loads, actually, let's just go ahead and load it. We'll just say, make this simple, and we want to keep everything looking like it is plain and DOS. Ha ha ha. We do want containers to have borders. So let's just see what happens there, and we'll just say HTML. All right, let's see now. It's still running. All right, look, it doesn't look like it's doing anything. Most of you that are used to progress bars, it's just going to sit here and dot, dot, dot. It's very much like a DOS-based system, and the way I'm going to build this Boox.Expert is it's going to be very DOS-based anyways, right? I think that we're going to head back. I mentioned earlier in my brainstorming video that I would like Mother, which is, you know, Aliens AI, to be very, very simplified. So I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to add too much styles to it, make anything overly demanding. This is just going to be almost like we're going back to DOS and make it still very friendly here. So notice this, it's got a couple of styles. In my HTML, you can see here's my core for the chat. That's my core right there. And you can see chat messages will be inserted. How? Well, it's going to insert them using this here. But you notice here that it's not grabbing it from my Azure. So it doesn't recognize Azure at all. Let's just go ahead and see what it looks like. And again, I love to use Code Beautify. So use Code Beautify where you can. I'm going to use Code Beautify. Show you. Look at that. This is JC Motorworks, one of the platforms that we're working on. So I'm going to click the X and replace that there. Oh, that is pretty darn cool. All right, so I'm not going to test anything out. I don't want to ruin the the cool moment here. This is awesome. But again, this is not coming from Azure, because if we look at the code in Code Beautify and we do a Control F and we type in Azure, oh, there's nothing there, right? So let's go back here. We can notice that it's still running the install for the Get Billing chat. And I'm going to let ChatGPT know here and say, hey, the chat data is cool, but we really want to pull the data from Azure. Can you use a placeholder for now while we are running the npm install process? All right, it knows what to do. And we'll also say here, we'll say we want to have the get records from the database run when when the page loads. When the page loads here. All right, so let's go ahead and have them do that. We will check in on our diagnostic console. It is still running. All right, and it's gonna now rewrite us the code for the front end. There is one thing to keep in mind whenever you're running functions. On the bottom left here, there's an area called cores under the API tab. Under cores, we have to make sure that we're allowing Code Beautify. You can see right now we are not allowing Code Beautify. So we will most likely get an error here in our developer logs. You're going to use the development logs a lot. If we go to more tools, developer tools, you can see that there are no errors here, which is great. Look at that. It looks good on an iPhone or Android. That's cool. So let's go back to our chat, and we can see now instead of it grabbing the data and doing placeholder or not placeholder, but instead of it inserting sample records directly into the front end, now it's putting me a placeholder for my URL. And I said we're going to be doing a lot of copying and pasting. You just have to know where to look here. So there's my API URL. It's going to fetch the data records from the URL and then display them for us here. And you can see it's going to dynamically create the records here for the display. And it tells us down here at the bottom how to replace the Azure function. So this is what our Azure function is probably going to look like. So let's grab this, and we will now go to we have to close this one. Make sure that we don't delete, we just copy and paste it in case we go back. And you can see now it is giving me a bunch of interesting sample chats. How is it getting that? I am not quite sure. It's using something that it knows. I don't know what this is, but I'm going to go here and check it out because that's funny. Oh, it must have known that there's a place to get sample records. So it's a JSON placeholder. Now, I'm not going to think about that too much there. So you can see that it has gone ahead and put into place what we need for the front end. Now I'm going to go back here, and it is still running. What we also have to do, and I will just prepare this right now using the same chat, and I'm going to say in addition to the get billing chat records, we also need to create a Azure function for the button send for the chat. It will need to create the chat in the current display of the front end while also adding the chat to the back end. I'd like to have it append the chat on the front end and then add it on the back end afterwards. This does, so that way the user sees it. So that way the user sees it quickly. Does this make sense? All right, so let's go ahead and add that in there. And this is still running. We're going to let it run. It's important that you see this run through all the way. If you don't, there could be some slight issues around the package being installed correctly, and then it will throw off the app from working correctly here. So let's see what it says. Okay, so it's adding, you can see here it's added a send message URL, and that's going to be your Azure function. So we're going to do another Azure function to talk to the back end. And it's appending records too. And it's also going to handle the send message. So it's going to send it over to that particular URL. All right. Great. And it's using our SQL environment variable for setting that up. All right, cool. So it's actually it's gotten us a warning. This is just a warning. Errors are errors. Warnings are just warning you. It will let us know once it's done, but it's very close to being done here. Very close. So here's our new function that we're going to use. And once that finishes, we also need the package.json. We also need the package.json and the function.json, please. Cool. It's funny because ChatGPT is actually far ahead from both my brain and what's happening on the diagnostic console side. Didn't always used to be the case, right? As someone who implemented systems, you would typically wait for the computer to get done, and now the computer is way far ahead. So once this finishes here, we will then go ahead and start working on the other function. But let's go look at our app. So here's our app in terms of the form and the way that we want it to look. And right now you can see, well, you know, it's putting the names kind of together here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's put the user to the right side and then OpenAI always on the left. And you're not going to chat with any other team members. We're going to want OpenAI to be our chat assistant to work with you on everything. So it's going to have no problems if we code it. Where it becomes problematic is if we start adding other users to the chat. But I don't think that's going to be a big issue because we could always say the current user ID, then put it on the left-hand side. So let's go back over here. It's still running. And my thought is do we like this layout? It is very DOS based. Do we want to have it be in white? I don't know. Still thinking about that one. All right, looks like 8L-node is no longer supported. That's okay. It's a warning. Just let it run. All right, so let's just wait here a couple minutes. Now, looking at the wireframe here, you can see that It's very basic, and what we want to do from an end result is, at the end of the day, we want to create an invoice. And in subsequent videos, we're going to introduce Stripe as a function, but creating invoices here, what we want to focus on is well, it's always what the user sends as a message. So OpenAI is going to respond with something as simple as answering the question, but we want OpenAI, we want to direct it to think. We want it to think about what that question is. So based on the user input, we're going to have OpenAI on the back end start to analyze, is this a question related to creating an invoice? Is it a question related to accounts receivable? Is it a question related to uh, maybe sending an invoice? If it's none of the above, then maybe it just responds with a friendly chat. If it is something of the above, then we want it to have an actual process that it performs. In this video here, we're going to be focusing on really just having OpenAI respond to the chat, and making sure that we can actually see the records here, and then we'll focus then on having OpenAI do something on the back end. So we are just waiting. You can see it's still thinking. I click down below. Um, uh, it is indeed running a little bit slow. Um, while that's running, I'm going to go back to, actually, let's just let it run. I will fast forward this part here. Okay. There it goes. All right. Um, it says, you can see here, it has gone ahead and run 24 packages, added 151. We are just going to now assume that it's working and go back here. I'm going to close out of that. And before we try that out, we are going to set up the other function so that way we can get that one running. Let's make sure, though, that this function is working. We're going to find our function, get billing chat, and we're going to test it out. We're going to test it out within the function itself first. We don't want to go ahead and try the front end first. We're going to test it and run it. And we're going to run a get here, and I'm going to delete this. We don't have a request that we're doing. If we were running a request, like we were sending some sort of data to try to have it return based on our input, we would change the get to a post, but we're just doing a get here. So we're going to run this, and I am crossing my fingers that we get something back instead of a 500. And our output should be our chats. So if we open up a notepad and do a new file here, or new tab, I am crossing my fingers that we get an output that has the chats here. We have the right name. No, it's a 500 server error. So, one of the questions that I have is why would it be a 500 server error here? So let's go ahead and grab this, and we will say we are receiving when running a get request. I went ahead and troubleshooted the error messages that we were receiving before, and let's just take a look here because we have the index.js. It's calling this MS SQL here, and if we click on package.json, the error actually had nothing to do with the code itself. But if we scroll down here, you'll see dependencies. Before, this dependency was 7.0.1, and ChatGPT just was using a very early version which is no longer compatible. So what I did was I just switched this to 11.0.1, and then I went back and did the npm install process again using the command prompt. Our output now, if we go to our code, which is from the front end that it created for us, you can see here that I included the URL from the Azure function, because we're calling the Azure function, and it's fetching the records from the API, getting the sender name, the chat message, and then formatting the timestamp here for the created on. So if we go ahead and run this now in our browser, you will see here are our chat messages. Now in the future, we're going to have a user ID where the user logs in, and we're going to create a token for that user, and that will pull those records specifically for the user, so that way multiple users in the system are not seeing their chat messages here. So if we go to the SQL database, you'll notice that here are the 10 records. Here is the text to display, and if we go back over to our chat window, here are the records here. Now, right now, if I were to type a message and say, can you help me bill a client, and if we click on send, you can see that the send button does not do anything. So what we need to do now is, what I like to do is just take this code here, go back to our ChatGPT and say, here is our code so far on the front end. Notice how there is a submit button, and we want to have the submit button call another Azure function that then creates the record on the same SQL database table with the same architecture and creates the record. If it comes from the send button, it is created by the user, and we want to use that same user ID, which is the
we can just copy it here. So we'll just do right click, copy, paste, and if it and we want to, for that specific chat session, make sure we display the message as an append process on the current display so the user does not see any type of pause or wait to see the message appear as if it was happening in real time. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and tell it to make sure to use a placeholder Azure function for now, as we will go ahead and build an Azure function here. Can you also provide an Azure function to um, to create the insert process on the database table? All right, so we're going to go ahead and ask it to do that as well. I'm going to go here and go back to Byron Kitchen. So we'll just say OK here. That's fine. And we're going to create a new function. So we've got right now our get billing chat function here. We're going to create a new function. And we will click on, again, it's coming from the front end. So we're going to do the HTTP trigger here at the top. We'll do next. And we will call this, maybe we'll call this post billing chat message. Or just post billing chat. Since we used get billing chat before, we'll use post. Create. It's now creating the function here. It says it created it successfully. It's going to take us to the sample code that it provides here, and I'm going to go back here and it's creating my front end, which is great. It's also going to create my Azure function, and we know that we need to have that package.json, which it's cool because we are now going to be able to just use the same package.json. It is going to take a second to process that npm install. I will certainly speed up the video for that process. So let's go back here and take a look. It's still creating the front end. And I'm just curious here now, brainstorming wise, because we can do this in real time now. We can brainstorm the front end. So what I really want it to do is respond to me through an OpenAI response. Now, for now, we're going to just send that chat message to the chat, but I would like it to respond. So just kind of think about how that is going to occur here. And we're going to use our OpenAI API key to do that. So let's take a look here at our code. And I do know that we have to use, I think, Axios for this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this front end code here into our code beautify. All right. And yes, it pulls up the chats. Perfect. And let's go here and say, because we are eventually, now I just know this just from using these plugins for the package.json here. So I'm going to say, because we're eventually going to use OpenAI in the Azure function, do you think we need to include, to run HTTP requests, Axios? If so, can we rewrite the Azure function as well as, and I'm just going to put here in parentheses, you have to be specific sometimes when you prompt. Say, don't worry about putting the OpenAI part in the function yet. We will do that later. But do we need to rewrite Azure function to include Axios and also include it in the package.json using MSSQL 11.0.1 and the function.json. All right, so we'll go ahead and send that there. And we'll see what it says. Yes, it is going to go ahead and using Axios is a good idea here. So we're going to use that. We're going to create the Azure function here. There's our test. Just, again, copy and paste. Save it. Go back here. Take a look at and you'll see, look, it's doing the SQL insert statement, and it knows our SQL table, which is great. For some reason, you're doing a new chat, just maybe you want to copy the SQL table details. I'm actually going to use the new one and put it here, save, and if we go down to our function.json, there's our package.json. Look, there's Axios. All right, that's for HTTP requests. And we have to remove these comments. So there's our 11.0.1. So we'll go into here. I'm just going to use the advanced tools. So on the bottom, we'll go to settings. We'll go to development tools, advanced tools. We'll go to go. And at the very top, we'll use the command debug console. Command will then go into the root folder under site, www.root or www.root, and there's a post billing chat. We'll edit the function.json. All right, it's going to be a post process, so we'll grab that, save it. Now we're going to add a package.json, a new file, and we're going to edit the package.json, which is here. We will remove the comments. All right, there's our MSSQL 11.01, Axios save, and now we will run the dreaded npm install and cross our fingers that it doesn't error, which it should not. It is going to take a long time because we've got two different packages we're installing here. All right, so we've now got that running. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the front end code, and we will go ahead and execute it. Boom, there it is, and we'll say hello there, and it's going to error. If we take a look at our more tools, development tools, we'll notice that there aren't any errors currently, but when I do press the send button here, yes, it did do the hello there. But you can see that it tried to add the access to insert, and it failed miserably. We've got the CORS response here, which is the control allow origin error message, which is saying that code beautify has not been added. But if you take a look at the URL, it's not trying to access our Byron Kitchen URL here. It's trying to access a placeholder, which kudos for whoever was able to get the placeholder.azure websites. Looking down here at the bottom, we can see there's a send message. We don't have to worry about that because, again, this has to do probably with the placeholder.azure websites. Now that we are able to at least see the chat here, you know, I'm now turning the hat from a technical resource to a front-end user app designer, and I'm just kind of looking at this like, well, what changes can we make? I don't want to go all out and make any changes right now to the actual layout. I actually kind of like this layout a lot. But I think that there might be some cosmetic things that we can work on while this is doing the npm install process, because we now kind of have a foundation to work with. First of all, I don't like this scroll bar here. That just stands out to me, number one. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this code. And because, I want to keep this chat here open, I'm going to open up a new chat under ChatGPT, just so that way we aren't confusing the AI. And we'll open up a brand new chat. My internet is slow. I'm in Cartagena. Leaving today, actually. Leaving back to Tampa for 5 days. I have to extend my P.O. box. And then I'm headed off to Tulum. So if you're in Tulum, hit me up. Let's just try this. Reload. There we go. Or maybe not. It's trying to. There we go. There we go. It's trying to. Okay, so we'll do new chat. On the top left. And we'll say, I have this code here. I would like to change the scroll bar in the chat and really the entire website to have a more modern, neumorphic look that encompasses the darker background. This would be awesome. And I'm going to stop it kind of in between here. I'm just going to say, instead of, well, it's just doing the CSS. That's great. I was going to say, just provide me the CSS styling. So it's going to go ahead and provide me the entire CSS it appears to. And while this runs, yep, still running. We'll go back here and we are going to blow this up, move up to the CSS styling, which is in between the style tags here. And if we look down, if we look at the top here, notice that what it added is the WebKit scroll bar. So we'll copy that code. We'll go here and we are going to just backspace it inside the styles, copy and paste. Notice I didn't use the trash can. That way I can do Control Z, and we'll do another hit here, and nothing is showing up. A lot of times ChatGPT does not like to hard code anything in here. It did though, so why aren't we getting the... it's very possible that the npm install is still currently running. So let's just do this to see and confirm that. Let's do Control Z and get this data back. And yes, you can see that it's not loading any of the chat information. So this npm install is likely causing some background issues there. So we'll just do that, and we'll wait. And you can already see that it's kind of changed some of the box shadowing here to give it more of that neumorphic design. It's also changed the boxes here at the bottom. Is that what I wanted? Well, not really, but kind of looks cool. So I'm going to leave it for now with that and just kind of see where we go from here. So we'll go back here to the npm install. So that's running there. So it's gone ahead and completed the install. Make these changes to my styling. So we'll close out of this. We'll open back up my styling here. we'll add that in, and we will wait and see if it loads. It should populate the chat information here. There it is. So take a look to the right. We've got this cool scroll bar now. We've also got our chat information here. I want to create a new API process. All right, so send. There it is. It adds it, and it probably errors still. If we look at more tools, developer tools, we can see, yeah, there's an error there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to say, let's go ahead now back to our function. And I want to pull up our new one that we just created called post billing chat. And if we go to here, I'm going to grab my get function URL. And we're going to copy that into our code. And you can see here, there's our placeholder now. So I'm going to copy that into our code. We've got our master key, which is here, our function, and I'm going to now then open this up. And I apologize for the slowness here of my internet, but it should load. And we should see the details. If we go to my chat here, and if I select it, I should see 10 records. And if I go ahead and start typing in here, maybe we'll say something like, I would like to add a new chat. All right. I think it's still loading up the chat details. I'm going to go ahead and just send it. All right, so we've sent it. I'm going to check our API, and you can see, take a look at it here. It says there are now 11 records. So if we sort, so I'm going to say order by, created on, and we'll say ascending. All right, and it's actually, I think, ascending like that. There it is, created on. There's my 9.6. I would like to add a new chat with my user ID and the message ID here. So we've got it built so that way it's putting everything in order here. Now, what I want to do is I want to have OpenAI respond to my chat requests here. So I'm going to close this out, and we'll go here, and we will say here, and we'll say this is working correctly with this code. What I want to do now is I want to pass the chat request in the Azure function that the front end is making, and I want OpenAI to respond with using the Turbo Chat GPT and respond with a message. I also want that message to be inserted similarly like the request is being inserted on the Boox chat SQL database table. I want to make sure, though, that the response is being created with the OpenAI username and the user ID for OpenAI of, let's go over here, and let's grab the user ID here and just copy that. I also want to make sure it is using the same message. I think it's, no, it's chat ID. Chat ID here to create the response. And in later videos, we'll talk about how we're going to create unique IDs, etc., for all these other chats. But we'll go ahead and ask it like that. All right. Oh, one more thing. One more thing. I would, here is my front end code. I want to make sure that when the post is made to the chat with the new message, that the API also receives the response from OpenAI back to the front end and displays it in the chat JSON messages instantly, without having to make another call to the database. If the user then goes back to the website, we can surely get it back from the database. A lot of times what I do here when I do prompting is, especially when building these apps, is I know that OpenAI knows this right here. I know it knows probably this right here. But sometimes you do have to be specific with your prompting. So by doing this, we are actually forcing it so that way it's not going to take another path, because there are multiple paths it could take. But I want the user experience to be seamless. We'll go ahead and send that. And I'm going to scroll up and just, actually it's probably going to create me new front-end code, but it's going to also update the Azure function here. Now notice right here that we have an OpenAI API key, and it's trying to use this environment variable here. We will go take a look at our environment variables, and then we're going to create a brand new key under create secret key. So let's just wait for this to load. Here's my index.json, and because we already have Axios installed, we're good there. So we'll go ahead and post that, save it. And it's creating my front end now. So I think this might work. Cross my fingers. Oh, what's it doing here? Is it hard coding anything? Username, Jordan. Text display is the message. User ID. Okay, it's hard coding my name because we don't have it looking for the user information yet. We'll handle that later on. All right, so we have our Azure function, which is here. Excuse me. All right, that's good. We'll then grab this front end. Oops. It actually sent me back the front end with my existing styles, you can see here. So that way it just doesn't take as much time. So I'm just going to copy it from the style down. And we'll go ahead and grab the style all the way down. And we'll add our last HTML tag down at the bottom. All right. There's our chat. There's our data. Um, so now what we're going to do is we're going to say, I'm just curious if it's putting these chats in any specific order. No, it's not. So we'll say, hello there. How are you today? No, it didn't do anything. Oh, there it is. Oh, it did work. It did work. Now let's go here and see if we've got the data and it says, hello there, how are you today? Hello, I'm just a computer program, so I don't have the abilities. So we do have now a working chat. Now, I don't like the user interface. I want to sort everything on the created on. So, amazing. That worked. Here is my current front end code. A couple of changes. A couple of changes that I want to make are, number one, we need to make sure that when the submit button is pressed, the chat request message is put into the append on the JSON chat so the user experience is seamless. Number two, we need to make sure uh, clear the chat message input after the submit button is pressed. And three, it's difficult to tell between OpenAI's chat messages and the user's messages. Can we justify one to the right and one justify the user's message to the right and OpenAI's messages to the left in the chat window? Can we sort the chat on the front end by the created on as if it was a typical chat application? And any chats that are appearing, the gallery should automatically scroll to that new chat. Let's add a thinking loading ... on the front end while the chat is waiting for a response from the post function. It should disappear when the new chat shows. I do like to use tools like fading in and fading out rather than just appearing to show that the front end is smoothly transitioning. All right, and 7, I don't think there's a 7. Let's just see what it does here. We're going to send that. Go back to here. I'm just taking a look. I like it. I like it. I like it. Look at all of its. Look at everything it's doing here for us. And that was all through natural language prompting. All right, it's going to rewrite this code. In the styling section, notice how it has the period and then the distinctive naming convention for different elements on the HTML .chat-container.chat-message. And as you read the code, if you are brand new to the world of CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, you'll start to really understand and see how the code works. And it's something as simple as color, hexadecimal. So if you're familiar with how to do animations within things like Photoshop and those types of tools for design and animation, you'll catch on pretty quickly here. All right. So it is creating this for me. The reason why it worked here, by the way, if we notice the process.env OpenAI API key, I already have this environment variable set up. Now, if you do want to create your own key to create that environment variable, then you can just do create a new secret key and follow the process here to create the secret key. That key can only be created once, or else you'll have to trash can it and then create a new one later. But that one is that you can store under the environment variable, and I'll walk you through how to do that here in a few minutes. There we go. So let's go ahead back to our front end. All right. And we'll load it up. I'm curious now information that it shows. And you'll notice here that we do have my information to the right now. So we have Jordan and OpenAI, which is awesome. Let's just take a look at the timestamps. These were the insert records that we created at 4:45 p.m. So if we scroll down, that looks good, that looks good, that looks good. Now we should see our chats. I would like to add a new chat. Hello there, how are you doing today? Hello, I'm just a computer program. How can I assist you? I'm hoping you can provide me with a few countries that I should visit in Latin America. All right, we're going to click the send. Let's see if it did do what I requested it. Send. All right. Thinking. Look at it down there at the bottom. Thinking. That's cool. Awesome. So you can see here, it's not laid out in any type of format. That's we can do through HTML later. I'm not too worried about that because the reality is I wanted to create this as like a DOS program to do billing. So I am totally fine with it not doing any type of styling here for the response. What I do want to do though is maybe change the color scheme between OpenAI and myself. I'm going to go back to ChatGPT and say, look, I love how it's coming. One of the things that I want to do is a conditional statement that is going to change maybe the color scheme of the response from OpenAI versus the response of the user. All right, response of the user. We could also change the chat bubbles very slightly. I am doing something DOS based from a layout look, so don't overdo the stylings, but we do need a subtle different color variation to identify the chat between one another. I do like the spacing or the justification. I would say that the grouping container behind the chat boxes should probably stay in their left or right positions, maybe only extend their boxes 75% of the width from either the left or right, depending on the respond user. right now every response is in a container that is almost full width, and that might be causing confusion as well. All right, so let's go ahead and send that there, and that might be our final change for this video. So it is through natural language going to completely change the front end user interface now. I'm excited because this gets us to a position where now we can start doing the fun part. So in video 2 that we're going to display for Boox.Expert, we are going to now get into creating invoices and identifying what the user is asking. So, are we asking to create an invoice? Are we asking to get the current accounts receivable balance? Are we asking to send an invoice? All of that can be done using responses from OpenAI, and I think that this will certainly provide us a good foundation to start editing the rest of the application. So in video 2, what I want to do though is walk through maybe how to set this up on DigitalOcean, and then that way we have a working website that we can use with VS Code here. So we can add it into VS Code and hook it up to Boox.Expert. And then probably video 3, we will dive into starting to ask it to actually do some AI thinking here. Right now we just have some AI responding with chat messages, but we'll get into the actual dive into the deep thought processes of OpenAI and how it's going to start making decisions for us. So let's we probably have to refresh this to get it to continue generating. All right, yep, it's down there. It's continue generating. I can't wait to hook this up to Stripe. I've already done some research into the OAuth authentication, but I can't wait to integrate this into Stripe. And once we do Stripe, then we're going to get into Plaid as well. We're going to integrate it into Plaid because I can't wait to also do my swiping for transactions. So let's do that. All right. Let's close that window. Oh, so cool. Now that's starting to get pretty cool there, right? Like, there's my response there. Look at how perfect it is with 75%. I mean, this is better than any developer could do in a matter of probably a day's worth of work. This looks good here. That is great. I am very excited. What is the capital of Colombia, by the way? Thinking. Look at how fast that was. That might have been faster than OpenAI itself, and how it did that design. So I'm gonna say, what is Bogota like? Can you tell me about some of the uh, cultural centers there? Thinking, thinking, thinking. Very cool. I mean, this just shows you the power of being able to put all this together in an environment that can be scalable. So now we've got our SQL databases, and what these companies that are very large in size won't tell you is that they're using SQL databases to store their data, and we now have this awesome SQL database that is going to be used for us to really build from. So look, this is all agile, and what's beautiful about this is typically software development would be done in a way that um, would always start with your designers and your discovery plan, and doing things in waterfall perspectives, making sure that the statement of work is signed, and all of these things, all of these cadences and processes. But from what you've seen, I am a business analyst. I'm a business analyst, so my role was really never to create software. And just in a matter of an hour, we were able to create this amazing chatbot that uh, is only going to get better. So, in the coming videos, we're going to take this chatbot to the next level. We're going to start to have it think about what the user is asking as it relates to invoicing and billing. And we'll even do some HTML forms within our chat itself to send some of those bills and such. So this is going to be our assistant here that I think is going to be our mothership. So I love this here. Thank you for joining. Please subscribe so you can see the next videos that I come out with here in the next, hopefully, couple of business days. All right, ciao.
Okay, just to recap, what we've done here today is we've built using ChatGPT in probably about an hour's worth of time. We've built out the front end design of just a simple user experience. We built out a chat using some back end database tables and be able to have the front end talk with the back end. We've built a couple of Azure functions. Where is this headed, right? That's the question that I got to ask myself. And when creating Boox.Expert and brainstorming, I've got another video about the brainstorming that you should watch that I've done. This was actually while I was in Cartagena. But where's it headed? Billing. We can do a much better job with billing. We can do a much better job with accounts receivable. We can build out a swiping type of platform for all of our banking transactions. So we'll integrate with that with Plaid down the road. We're gonna start to integrate this with Stripe. So in the next video, in the next couple videos, we're gonna start building this into Stripe. From a financial reporting perspective, you're going to be able to do billing. You're going to be able to do expense management with this platform, and at the end of the day, being able to put together a financial statement. So that's where I think we're headed with this. I don't know if this app is going to be built for and really designed for Fortune 500 companies. Really is not intended to, or publicly traded companies, or even small businesses that might be doing 30 million plus a year in revenue. I really do think that the future economy is headed in a situation where people are going to start becoming more solo entrepreneurs, and with that, there is a need to become organized around just from a financial perspective. I know that from being a small business owner myself, how difficult it is to manage the financials in a way that takes all the best practices that are out there from an accounting perspective, because they're so integrated together right now, that's where I think the real opportunity lies with this, is to enhance the experience of being able to have a successful small business as a solo entrepreneur, but also being able to keep it organized and have those controls in place. So being able to see like a visibility of your business 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, forecasting, etc. Is all of that going to be in version 1? No. I'm going to focus on billing right now, and then we'll start building videos that are going to be related to the expense side with Plaid later. But let's get the billing right. I think that the billing can be done with some of these Stripe connectors. So I am eager and excited to start working on that piece of this. Subscribe, follow me, follow Culebra Partners, see what we're doing in this space with AI, and I am very fortunate that we have a tool like AI, because 6 years ago, doing some of these things, even 2 years ago, was not possible. So the cost of this platform is going to be very economical in terms of pricing. I'm excited to go along this journey and hope that this tool becomes useful for solo entrepreneurs. So see you on the flip side.